John moved my thing because he had to spread out. I had my plate here, so I moved it. I had to move because this.
But that was only your lunch.
Yeah. Right, this one.
Yeah, live. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Morgan Spring Bay Council held on Tuesday, the 24th of October. The Morgan Spring Bay Council acknowledge and pays respects to the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional and original owners and continuing custodians of this land on which we gather, and acknowledge the elders past and present. Agenda item 1.2 is councillors. All councillors are present. There are therefore no apologies. Agenda item 1.4 is attendance. In attendance today, we have the General Manager, Mr. Greg Ingham, the Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Alex Woodward, the Director of Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Peter Porch, the Director of Corporate and Community, Mr. Les Blaine, Mr. James Bonner, Senior Planner, and Miss Laura Small, our planner. Agenda item 1.6 is the declaration, late reports. General Manager, we have a late report, I believe.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, we have a late report that's included in the confidential closed session of council.
Yes, Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you. I'll move that council accepts the late agenda item into confidential at 2.3
To deal with leave of absence.
to deal with leave of absence.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Edwards. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Declaration of interest or conflict. As Mayor, I request elected members to indicate whether they have any interest personally or via a close associate as defined in section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or to any conflict as described in Council's Code of Conduct for councillors in any item included in the agenda. Councillor McQueenie. Thank you. Councillor McQueenie will declare a conflict of interest in the closed session. Agenda item 1.7 is the declaration of office, and it does give me great pleasure to welcome Councillor Richard Parker to the chamber. There is a recommendation on page 7. Deputy Mayor, thank you.
I'll move that council formally acknowledges the making of the declaration by Councillor Richard Parker in the presence of the General Manager at the Council Chambers, Triabunna, on Tuesday the 10th of October 2023.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Woods, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And as I said, Councillor Parker, welcome back to council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Agenda item 2 is the confirmation of the minutes. 2.1, the ordinary meeting of council on the 26th of September. There is a recommendation on page 8. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you. I move that the minutes of ordinary meeting of council held on the 26th of September 2023 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McQueenie. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is Councillor Parker, thank you. Councillor Parker, I won't record your vote won't be recorded as a vote against the minutes, simply because whilst you weren't at that particular meeting, other councillors have recognised that the minutes were accurate, and so that's appropriate in the meeting procedures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2.2 is the date and purpose of. Oh, did I put that motion by the chance? I did not. Thank you. Agenda item 2.2 is the date and purpose of workshops held. Councillor Young, thank you.
I move the council notes the information in item 2.2.
Thank you. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Now, General Manager, I think there's a couple of things that needed to be added in that, if my memory.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct. So these would be corrections would be made for the formal minutes. So under item 2.2 on page 10, the workshop on the Tuesday, the 17th of October. The deputy mayor and myself were not at that workshop. So that'll be corrected in the minutes.
And we have included after the deputy mayor due to personal reasons, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Work section.
Yeah, work commitments, okay. Right, so. it's agenda item 10.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
is the correction that is being made on page 10 as opposed to the motion on page 9?
Yes, I believe it is.
Thank you. So
We
what I
actually-
moved is 2.2 page 9,
Yes.
and there is another motion proposed 2.2 page 10.
Thank you,
Yes.
councillor Young. I've just realised that. So we're dealing with the motion that's on page 9. So
Thank you.
council notes the
Awesome.
information on page
Thank you.
9. Thank you. So if there's nothing further on
There,
the workshop of the 10th of October, councillor Parker?
yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The 10th of October and also the following one, my name's missing from there.
We have corrected that, councillor
you?
Parker.
Oh,
Yes, it
sorry.
will be corrected for the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And Miss Hazelwood, it was remiss of me not to mention that Miss Hazelwood is in the chamber as well. Miss Hazelwood has advised me that she was correcting the
Thank you.
minutes for that
Yep,
purpose, so.
thank you.
Right, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour, this is the October 10th workshop. Thank you. Motion's carried, thank you. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that council notes the information with regards to the 17th of October 2023, including all.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Young, thank you. And the changes or the amendments will be made in the minutes in relation to councillor Parker's attendance, the deputy mayor and the deputy mayor's reason for not being at that particular workshop. So if there's nothing else, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 3.1 is the public question time. And there are 2 questions on notice from the same correspondent, as I understand it, General Manager.
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
So the 2 questions are from Mr. Peter Kuhn. Question 1. Does council believe that the misrepresentation in the submitted documentation of the extent and height of the eucalyptus globulus tree adjacent to but overhanging the site impacts the assessment of the DA, especially given that there is no mention in the planner's assessment of this matter? Now, although it's not in the question, I just want to make the point that just refers to the Morris store development. The answer to that question 1, the eucalyptus globulus is located on Crown land managed by NRE Tasmania. The application does not include any works on the adjoining land, and therefore an assessment was not included in the planner's report and has not impacted the assessment of the development application. It is noted that the Neighbourhoods Disputes About Plants Act 2017 does not apply to plants on Crown land, and therefore the developer would need to liaise with property services, i.e. Crown land, in regards to any proposed works on the adjoining land. Furthermore, given the adjoining site is subject to a natural assets code, it is likely that a discretionary application would be required. The second question from Mr. Kuhn: what steps is council taking during the development assessment approval construction and thereafter to assure the future health of this tree, given its recognition in council's flora and fauna management plan and its proximity to and impact of the proposed developments? The answer to that question 2, the eucalyptus globulus is located a minimum distance of approximately 3 meters from the boundary of the subject site at 13 to 15 Franklin Street, Swansea. The application did not include any works relating to the tree, and therefore any works involving the tree have not been recommended for approval. Condition 1 of the planner's recommendation requires use and development to be in accordance with the endorsed plans, noting that the endorsed plans do not show removal or works associated with the Eucalyptus globulus. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Agenda item 3.2 is questions without notice. I believe we don't believe we have any questions without notice.
No, Madam
General
Mayor.
Manager, thank you. Right, agenda item 4 is the planning section. So under regulation 25 of the local government meeting procedures, regulations 20, sorry, Councillor Young,
Move that,
can I just read the
of course,
regulation?
please.
So with that, under regulation 25 of the local government meeting procedures, regulation 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 to section 4 of the agenda. Councillor Young, your motion.
My motion was that council, I move that council now acts as a planning authority at 2:11 p.m.
Seconder. Councillor McQueenie, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against is carried unanimously. Agenda item 4.1 is DA 2023/160 Bluestone Bay and Cook's Corner, Fresno National Park reinstatement of standing camps as a tourist operation. There is a recommendation on page 22. Councillor Woods, thank you.
I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay Council DA 2023/00160 at Bluestone Bay and Cook's Corner, Fresno National Park, for the reinstatement of standing camps tourist operation be approved with the following conditions 1 through to 6 and advice A to L.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Edwards, thank you. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you. I'll reserve.
You reserve. Thank you. Are there any other, is there a speaker for the motion or against? Deputy Mayor?
I'm neither for or against at this stage. I'm going to be quite interested in what the other councillors have to say because I've made my mind up on it. I half of me says that it's a good development in the sense that it probably allows people who may not always be able to go camping in our national parks that don't have a level of confidence to set up on their own and enjoy that space. And this development actually probably allows them to do that and gives them the confidence to do it. And then the other half of my deliberations are that it is a national park and we are opening it up to a private company to make a profit. So I'll be very interested to hear what other councillors have to say on the matter.
Thank you. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've got quite a bit to say about this. I believe there's two major issues here.
Councillor Churchill, could I just interrupt you there? We have quite a large agenda and I'm going to be a wee bit strict this particular meeting with the timeframes for speaking. So I will be timing, and if we get close to the 5 minutes, it'll be
Ring the bell.
well.
It's really
It'll be
okay.
that.
I got to 5 minutes before in my life.
I did threaten at one point to get the gavel out, but I'll use my pen. So thank you, Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thank you. I just in response to the Deputy Mayor's comment there about people with less ability perhaps to attend the park, that is already being attended to by the same company, and I believe doing it very well. That's my view. So that would be my response to that. But I think the issues that concern me are firstly, that there's no assessment of this development proposal under the reserve activity assessment process. Parks and Wildlife Service, under its own policy on standing camps at P017 section 5.2, refers to a requirement to assess new, expanded or modified standing camps, including an RAA. Why has this not been done? Or if it has, why have we, the planning authority, not been provided with that report? The proponents exhibited documents by EcoTAS, the Wobster report, in several places refers to the assumption that an RAA will be performed as part of the assessment process. Council's acting senior planner also refers to this assumption at 23.4.4, vegetation management, P1D. Why has the RAA not formed part of the reports to properly inform our decision? The two proposed standing camps involve a total area of over 13,000 square metres. The reports we have to hand are attempting to convince the planning authority that constructing, demounting the camps each year and servicing these two sites on a daily basis for many months of the year will have minimal impact on the environment and will not detract from the feeling of this being a wild place. I'm not convinced. Many of the representations, and there were 58, I think, representations, only one of which was in support of this project. Many of the representations refer to the Freycinet Peninsula Master Plan 2019. And I think this is the one issue that concerns me most. The Tasmanian National Parks Association representation presented in the attached documents refers to a very important issue, and I quote directly from that representation. The Tasmanian National Parks Association notes that the Freycinet Peninsula Master Plan, June 2019, page 13, calls for no further built tourism infrastructure south of the hazards, in order to protect the sense of wildness for visitors who choose to venture beyond the primary day use area, as well as limit environmental impacts on the national park. The Cook's Corner component of this proposal requires the construction of new or additional tourism infrastructure south of the hazards. Implementation of the master plan is a shared responsibility between the state government, Glamorgan Spring Bay Council, and the private sector. That's in master plan at page 14. The TNPA appreciates that compliance with the master plan is not statutory, but considers that if this proposal is approved, Parks and Wildlife Service should make a public statement explaining why it has chosen to ignore this particular prescription. End of quote. I would add to that the planning authority, GSBC, should also make a similar public statement to explain its reason for choosing to ignore the master plan should it choose to do so. GSBC is a party to the master plan. To ignore the master plan is to undermine public confidence in this and similar documents. Much work and expense goes into the making of such documents. What message are we giving to the community? I cannot support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. If I may, I remember reading in the document that Parks had undertaken an RAA checklist at both sites, which included Freycinet experience undertaking a flora and fauna and Aboriginal heritage assessment at each site, and deemed that RAAs were not required, which would seem to me to be a little bit against their policy, if you like. Is that
Exactly.
exactly? Thank you.
Precise.
but I'm not sure, and I need to defer to Mr. Woodward on this. I think the master plan and the RIA, or the master plan particularly, or Ms. Small perhaps, the master plan doesn't form part of our planning consideration, Ms. Small. Is that right? I'm having a little bit of trouble with the microphone.
Just tap it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. So not a requirement of the Land Use Planning Approvals Act or the Tasmanian Planning Scheme. It is noted, given that the structures are not permanent and will be removed as required by the parks lease, that's also a consideration and arguably still consistent with the master plan.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, just to follow up on what our planning officer said. It's the reinstatement of a business that was already operating pre-COVID, with no issues. With no issues from Parks or anyone else. So as I see it, if Parks and Crown are happy for it to continue and they can restart their business and all the infrastructure is removed at the end of the season, why are we suddenly opposed to these people trying to continue their business? I will certainly support it.
Now, I don't know if you wanted to close,
Yeah, but
Councillor
I
Woods.
just want to ask a question. If I may.
You may ask a question by all means.
If I may ask a question
Yes.
through you to either planners within the room, we've got 3 of them today. Why are we dealing with this? How come parks aren't? Come parks aren't the ones that have the overarching decision on this? As a planning authority, I just would like to know why.
It's a particularly good question.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Not working.
Speak up, please.
That one doesn't.
Through you, Madam Mayor, so every parcel of land within the municipality is subject to zoning and code requirements. The landowner at the end of the day would need to give approval, and they have given the consent to lodge the development application. It's still up to Parks whether we refuse or approve it here today. It would be up to Parks as the landowner and the lease that the Freixenet Walking Group are subject to. But essentially, everything still needs to go through the Tasmanian Planning Scheme and through the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act. So you can see the discretions, which there aren't many, but there's 2 discretions in the application that couldn't meet the acceptable solution, and therefore is subject to a planning application.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers on the matter? Councillor Churchill, you wish to add something?
Just through you, Mayor, if I may, Councillor Edwards' statement implied that the stopping of that this use was through COVID. It is not COVID related. They haven't been doing it that way for 13 years. So the way they've been doing it is by spending each night at their lodge at Friendly Beaches and taking people out by boat to do parts of the walk or by bus to do parts of the walk each day. So they're going back to something they were doing 13 years ago. I think that just needs clarifying that it was not a COVID related issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to add anything before Councillor Woods closes?
Can I just clarify that the last time the standing camps were there was 13 years ago? Is that correct?
I read that in. I think that was in Ms. Small's report, actually. So I can't remember the exact time frame. I think that the camps operated for about 13 years, but I'm not sure when they actually stopped.
I thought the workshop it was related, but Councillor Churchill thoughts different.
Ms. Small, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and so it states that the has operated the walk since 1992 and operated for approximately 13 years before ceasing what is proposed in this development application.
Okay,
so
so
2 overnight. So around 2005.
Okay, so effectively they haven't operated for about 20 years is what we're saying.
In the way that they're.
12 years,
Correct.
18
Yeah.
We'll get this one.
Right, so I like other speakers have reservations around this. But being constrained by the planning scheme requirements and taking account of the lack of requirement for an RAA by parks, I don't think I have much option but to vote for this particular recommendation. Councillor Woods, do you wish to close still or?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm sort of thinking on my feet here a bit.
Can I?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Parker, before
Oh,
I start.
sorry, Councillor Parker, I missed you.
That's all
Sorry.
right. That's all right, Madam Mayor. Could I have a clarification first? When it was operating before, and we've got on it, construction of 2 showers. Were there showers before? Because I don't know how long when it was open before the tours went for. There might have been only 2 days. So were there showers there before?
I have to ask Ms Small or Mr Bond. Thank you, Ms Small.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I cannot answer that question and arguably not relevant to what we're seeing in front of us today.
It is to my question because I find putting these showers there, and it does say, please note it, or fresh water and sewage, sewage and grey water that will be contained with 1,000 litre containers and removed from each side by boat or vehicle. Is that 1,000 litres of fresh water, and then we put it into another, when it's processed, it then comes out into another 1,000 litres into another container? Because my argument is, how on earth is anyone going to lift a 1,000 litre container?
And that might not be something that can be addressed under the planning scheme, Councillor Parker. It's probably something that needs to be addressed in a different forum, I think. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to defer to Ms Small in relation to that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, correct. So the discretions that I've assessed and the information I've taken into account in the assessment is in relation to the vegetation management and the clearance within a priority vegetation area only.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I think also there will be some issues around that will have to be addressed. Can I just clarify? I think I did read it, but can I just clarify that all the structures will be demountable? So they'll all be taken away at the end of the season,
Through you, Madam Mayor.
including the toilet and shower infrastructure that Councillor Parker's referred to.
That is correct.
Thank
yes.
you.
Can I just- excuse me.
Councillor Churchill.
May I have just a little further clarification on that? I believe the platforms are not removed. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's incorrect. Everything will be removed.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Woods, unless Councillor Young or Councillor McQueenie have something to add, I will defer to you for closing debate.
Just
If
have one
you,
more quick clarification, just that all the licenses and approvals have been paid for and maintained since their previous use. That is correct, isn't it?
that, Ms Small,
Read that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct.
So
Thank
all
you.
their approvals are still in place.
That is correct.
thank you. So now Councillor Woods.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a tricky one for me personally, because one side says yes and the other side says no, you know, it's head and heart business. One thing that I like about this is it's only 12 people at any one time. So it's not going to be masses of people going into the national parks, and there already are masses of people that go into national parks. So, but this proposal is for, 12 people at any one time for a good number, a couple of months a year. So it's hard. It's a very tricky one. And also, like things have changed extramentally since it was last running. So I dare say the proponents have had to jump through many hoops and done a lot of cartwheels and all sorts of things to get this up and going. So on the basis of that and you know, the fact that we're a planning authority, you've got to think with your head, not with your heart. I will be supporting this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woods has closed debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Edwards, Deputy Mayor Simons, Councillor Woods, Councillor Young and Mayor Arnold. Those against? Councillor Parker, Councillor McQueenie and Councillor Churchill. The motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 4.2 is DA 2023/0184 22 Murray Street, Bicheno, a residential construction of a building. There is a recommendation on page 37. Mover, please. Deputy Mayor Simons.
I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, DA 2023/00184 at 22 Murray Street, Bicheno, CT 185003/1 for the construction of a dwelling to be approved with the following conditions: 1 through to 9, and the following advice A through to L.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Edwards, thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak to the motion? Close
Again,
debate.
I'll close debate.
Close debate. Thank you. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against? Councillor Churchill or a speaker?
Speaker.
Just a speaker, that's fine.
Question in here somewhere. That's right. On page 33, under the planner's response, the second, the top box to the right, the site adjoins the local business zone to the north and east and the general residential zone to the south. The use of the land for the development of a residential dwelling is expected to increase the amenity of the adjoining residential properties. I was just wondering if I could have an explanation of that statement, please.
Small, is this you? This is you. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I ask for clarification again on what subclause we're referring to?
Yeah, right. It's okay. It's P2, and it's under the first part of P2. Buildings must be cited to. So on the next page, it's your response. The second last paragraph, second last line, or the second last paragraph. The use of the land for the development of a residential dwelling is expected to increase the amenity of the adjoining residential properties. I just want an explanation as to how that works, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the clarification, Councillor. So this is in regard to looking at, and if you take into consideration what's said above that, so we're looking at what is an unreasonable loss of amenity. In order to establish what that is, I've undertaken an assessment of the current amenity and the potential amenity. So given that it's a local business zone and the permitted uses in a local business zone, for example, your general retail and hire food services and things like that, having a residential use adjoining general residential use is expected to increase the potential amenity as opposed to the other permitted uses in the local business zone.
I'm still not quite sure I understand how, but
Can I ask the planner a question about that?
Well, if you may, Councillor Young, if Councillor Churchill has finished his questions. Thank you, Councillor Young.
Do you in effect mean that it could be a whacking grade commercial building put there, But if there is a dwelling with reasonable height restriction, as I understand, one opinion says there is a reasonable height restriction, that will have a far lesser effect on the adjacent property than a whacking great commercial building. Is that what you're really saying?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Exactly. So if you continue to read that same paragraph, it does end by saying, as a conflict in use is not likely to occur. So we're looking at the conflict in uses and the potential amenity.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Small. Is there any other questions? Any other comments? Deputy Mayor, you wish to close?
I'd just say again, it's another difficult planning matter in that, and I suppose, and it's no fault of councillors to be in a position where it's recommended for approval, but I just question the height of these buildings that need a 4 metre floor level or a 4 metre ceiling level at the ground floor. We've got plenty of storage in Bicheno now. There's dedicated areas for that that sort of storage, and I just feel that we're constrained by those within the planning scheme, and in a sense forced to approve these developments.
And Deputy Mayor, I understand that you have close debate, and technically there shouldn't be any more comment, but I understand that there was some concession made in relation to the height in this on this DA that may have provided some comfort to the representatives. So, so on that note, I will put the motion. All those in favour, those against, it's carried unanimously. Agenda item 4.3 is DA 2023/0161. It's 60A Burgess Street, Bicheno, the emergency services ambulance station with staff amenities. There is a recommendation on page 48. Anyone? Motion? Councillor Churchill, is that an indication that you are prepared to put the motion?
I'll put the motion.
I'll put the recommendation, sorry. Oh, yeah, go.
I move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, Glamorgan Spring Bay, DA 2023/00161 at 60A Burgess Street, Bicheno, CT 185285/1 for the construction of an ambulance station, emergency services, be approved with the following conditions: 1 to 20.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Parker, thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak to the motion or close debate?
I may wish to do both, if that's all right. But
I will be lenient on this occasion, councillor.
I think I can do both. I thought I had that right to do. But look, this one is really difficult. There's issues around this that I'm sure other people in the room are probably better able to speak about even than myself. But I think looking at the development looks very good on its site. I don't have an issue with that. It's the site that is concerning. There's been a lot of community discussion and disagreement about whether this site should be used or not. And depending on the discussion in the room, this may be the very first time I've put a motion and voted against it. So I'll preempt that because I really am open to a decision on this.
So, councillors, I should say that we did have an approach from some community members asking could the matter be deferred on the basis that there's been insufficient community consultation. in the view of the community. There's been insufficient community consultation. Mr. Woodward did put that question to the developer and received a response that said, no, they were not prepared to defer this agenda item and that we would need to deal with it today as the planning authority. So whilst we tried very hard as officers, they tried very hard to get the deferral for further consultation with the Bicheno community around their concerns. Unfortunately, the developer chose to say no. Councillor Woods.
Thank you. I might be rather scathing on this one when I say this, though. This is a Department of Health,
Yes, it is.
a government agency
Yes, that have said
that
no.
have said no
That-
to the community of Bicheno, to their requests.
That's
And they have put it on us to make this decision. I am so
That-
disgusted with them.
that's
And we are the ones that are going to cop it in the neck.
and we have to deal
again.
with it as the planning authority today.
Yeah, I know, and it's a very different hat that we have to wear, and I hope people understand that
Mm.
when we make our decision, that we are a planning authority. We cannot take emotion into this. It's a decision that we have to make on the recommendation and the reports that we get.
That's exactly right.
But the health department themselves and the government agencies have
I
ignored a community.
I think it's fair to say, Councillor Woods, that the community of Bicheno understand the position that we're in.
I hope
because of
so.
Conversations that they've had with members of the council. So.
Yeah. Thank
Councillor
you.
Young.
Madam Mayor, it seems that our betters are telling us what is suitable for our community, whether we like it or not. And from what I can read of the development application, it fits within the scheme. And we're bound really to approve it, otherwise will be dealt with adversely on appeal and possibly with an order for costs. But before I came on council, I used to have a belief, misguided though it might have been, that government was there to do things for the benefit of the people to the extent that government had the power to do things. And rushing this development is something that sticks in my throat. But our betters have told us how to handle it.
Deputy Mayor, thank you.
I'll just be speaking against the motion today. I won't be supporting it. And the request to approve this development application puts me in a difficult position as a councillor, as there does seem to be no valid grounds for refusal according to the qualified advice. My lack of support is based on my principles and my desire to get the best outcome for Bicheno. I absolutely support the building of an ambulance station in Bicheno, and as everyone would in this room and everyone I suspect in the municipality would. The issue is where it's situated. As a councillor, as a long-time local resident, and as a person who's lived in Bicheno and listened to the Bicheno community, I know the proposed site at 68 Burgess Street is a poor choice. It's been a poor choice from day one. It's a poor choice that's been compounded by the department and the state government's lack of proper consultation. A total lack of understanding of Bicheno's town centre and a total disregard for the key stakeholders' contributions and suggestions to provide options for a more suitable site. There seems to be an inability for the department to understand this and for them to be able to reconsider and choose a more suitable alternative, which, yes, will involve a compromise on their behalf. The current proposal will have negative impacts on the future of Bicheno and the development of Bicheno. The current Health Minister, Mr Guy Barnett, stated in the Examiner on the 29th of October that the station site was selected following consultation with key stakeholders. I'm not sure who the key stakeholders are that Mr Barnett is referring to, but to my mind, the key stakeholders would be the Health Department, Ambulance Tasmania together, Glamorgan Spring Bay Council, Bicheno's business community, Bicheno's Community Development Association and the Bicheno community. 4 of the 5 key stakeholders have made numerous representations to the department and the relevant ministers as to the unsuitability of the site. Mr. Barnett goes on to say the community consultation supported the preferred site. The report, the Pitt and Sherry report he refers to, received 33 written responses, 15 in favour, 10 not in favour, and 8 undecided. No data on who responded or where they were from. Now, that's not the type of consultation I would expect a minister to allow his department to override the key stakeholders' concerns. The Health Department has consistently asserted the station needs to be centrally located in Bicheno so as to minimise response times, and rightly so. Unfortunately, the site chosen is not as centrally located as the department might think. And if you want to split hairs on the geographical location, the centre of Bicheno, it's approximately 1.3 kilometres further north. And of course, I'm not allowed any common sense to apply to that part of the argument. I'm just using it to further my argument, which is not unlike the Health Department. The same piece of consultation that decided that this decision is based on makes note that the project will have minimal impact on tourism in the Bicheno area. It's interesting because no contact was made with the leading tourism agency, East Coast Tourism, to give that statement any credibility. It shows a total lack of understanding of the site's potential. 68 Burgess Street is a piece of prime commercial land, which with proper development would help complete the retail precinct within Bicheno in an orderly and strategic manner. This is recognised within Glamorgan Spring Bay's own structure plans, but again, totally ignored by the state. And this is the same state government that tells councils around Tasmania that they need to do better when acting as the planning authorities. The land is zoned local business, and by definition, the station is allowable, but it does not fit the desired characteristics of the local business zone's purpose. The owners of 60 Burgess Street, before it was compulsorily acquired, had submitted a DA for a substantial retail and affordable housing development across the whole of the site, a development which would have run into the millions of dollars. As it stands now, the remaining portion of 60 Burgess Street, as the Crown only took half of the title, now seems to have been rendered commercially unviable to develop due to access issues and size constraints. The compulsory acquisition should not be lost on the people of Tasmania who are in effect paying for this land. Having spoken with a land valuer to better understand what the government may have to pay to acquire the preferred site, the estimate I was given was in excess of $1 million, plus potential cost of lost opportunity on the remaining portion. The key stakeholders I've spoken to are of the opinion that alternatives would have been far more economical. The traffic impact assessment does not take into consideration how the local businesses, and when I say local businesses, think key stakeholders, will be adversely affected by the loss of parking on the western side of the highway due to the required 18-metre entrance for the station. No account seems to be taken in for the hundreds of cars and pedestrians in that area over the tourist season. And how do I know this? Because I see it year on year on year with my own eyes. The businesses in the area are very concerned about the safety aspects of that issue, and rightly so, and that's reflected in their representations. The station provides parking, it provides its own parking to operate, but no thought's being given to the net loss of parking Bicheno incurs, and this directly affects the businesses in that area. One of the most disappointing parts of this DA being lodged is the disregard that has been shown to the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council and to Bicheno and to its future opportunities. The lack of ability of the Minister and his department to understand the concerns that are being expressed, and the inability to give those concerns any real meaningful consideration is at best disappointing, and at worst a frightening indictment of the government's ability to achieve good planning outcomes. A simple solution could overcome all these issues, and that is choose another site. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other speakers? Councillor McQueenie?
Yeah, I share the concerns and thoughts of a number of people who've spoken already. I come from an emergency service background in part, and I think the establishment of a new depot is fantastic. And I also absolutely recognise the state government's concerns with some of the other suggested sites in terms of access, but agree that there seems to have been others that would fully fit it and also support the development of Bicheno. So I think it's really unfortunate.
Any speakers? Councillor Parker, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can't recall ever seeing council being approached by something where the government won't give us extra time. My question to you is, I know I'm acting as a planning officer, but I'm voting against this because I feel that the people in Bicheno haven't been given enough time. Where does this council stand if all the four councillors do the same?
In terms of the outcome, it would mean that there hadn't been a decision made, and we would have to we still have to make a decision. We can't have a tied vote or a lost vote in planning, Councillor Parker. It needs to have an outcome. Planning has to have an outcome.
Yeah. And if that outcome was to favour what I just said, then what would the outcome?
Then we would need a motion to refuse with appropriate planning reasons. So it would need to have valid planning reasons, which in my personal view would be difficult to achieve at the moment, based on the report that we've had. Because if I may, before any other speakers, I personally don't like this proposal. It's my firm belief it's on the wrong site. The style and bulk of the building is, in my view, inappropriate, but then sometimes beauty's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? Although the style and bulk of the building does appear to be consistent with the requirements of housing and ambulance, if you base it on other recently constructed buildings in neighbouring councils. But I am, as Councillor Woods identified earlier, constrained by the provisions of the planning scheme, and the planners have a provide qualified advice report that addresses the planning scheme requirements for that particular area. So I will reluctantly vote for it. I need to say, though, to reiterate that our staff tried very hard to get this developer to agree to an extension of time so that there could be further community consultation. So if I may, Councillor Woods, can I go to Councillor Edwards, please?
Yes, just quickly, it appears that the feeling of the room is we don't want this development without further consultation.
I'm sorry?
It appears that the feeling of the room is we don't want this development without further consultation with the ratepayers, particularly in Bicheno. But I'm guessing that the vote will probably be all against, but we are completely hamstrung by the constraints of being planning officers.
Planning scheme.
And it is a very untenable situation that we're put in. I think it's quite disgraceful, to be perfectly honest, and completely agree with Councillor Parker and others who have said that the Department of Health not to give us another month for more consultation. I have been talking to various people, politicians who are also opposed to this, and it's I don't know what we do. No. I want to vote no, but I know as a planning officer I probably can't.
That's my concern. If the outcome is that the vote is against this motion, I have to be honest and say, as chair of this planning authority meeting, I will struggle with how we will deal with it. And I will need to seek further qualified advice, I think, Councillor Woods, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would like to acknowledge Deputy Mayor Simons's words. He spoke
Absolutely.
very, very well on behalf of his community. And if the politicians aren't listening right now, hang their heads in shame. I am disgusted in the fact that I said it before and I'll say it again, that the state government have put us and that community in this position. All they're asking for is a deferral so that there can be more community consultation and possibly a different site. Listen to the people, and yet we're not allowed to. As a planning authority, we're not allowed to listen to the people.
Exactly.
And with all due respect to our planners and our reports that we get, they're the ones that we need to listen to. I've never really ever been really very angry in a council meeting, but actually today I am.
I understand.
I just want to, I can't make it any more clearer. Anyway, thank you.
If I could, I would just say I have actually messaged a couple of politicians and said, go to 2 minutes 42 on the live stream and have a little look.
Exactly. As I said, are there any other speakers in relation?
I just want, can I just add to that?
Yeah.
We just, sorry, you're closing, but I think it's important that we actually discuss this and,
Yes.
and show the community that we are talking and we are listening.
Mhm.
There is if I may, I'm going to quote something from a letter that we got, and it's the last paragraph, and it says, beyond the performance criteria, we note that the Department of Health report issued following a community engagement process in late 2022 undertook to consult with the local community before plans were finalised. Whilst that sits outside of planning authority responsibility, as the representatives of the local community, we believe that Glamorgan Spring Bay Council has a duty to show regard for community concerns, which at this time are far more widely held than just Bichno Investments. Oh, sorry, shouldn't have said that last one. But anyway, I did. That is what, that says it all as far as I'm concerned. And I want to reiterate again, Madam Mayor, that this is nothing against our planners. It's maddening. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Churchill, would you like to close debate on this matter? But I just would like to, caution's not the right word. I'd like council to consider what the effects may be if this is a lost motion and what we will need to do.
Madam Mayor, do you need a foreshadowed motion? Was thinking what would happen if in fact this motion is not passed?
I think we test this on the floor of the chamber at this point, and take it from there.
I'm not offering one.
No,
I couldn't think of what to say, but it might be a method of dealing with it without having to go nuts and call another meeting and go through the rigmarole we have done in the past.
The other option may have been deferral, but unfortunately we are constrained by timeframes under the planning scheme. And as I said before, I have serious doubts about this, and I would dearly love to be able to support the community in relation to further consultation with the Department of Health. I think the ambulance station is sorely needed pardon the pun. I think the ambulance station is needed in Bichno, but I think we are in a situation now where we have to consider the qualified advice that we've received in relation to it, based on the fact that the developer chose not to withdraw the matter from today to give us that extra time. So,
Developer being the state.
the Crown. So, Councillor Churchill, would you care to close debate based on that? I'm happy to take it. And I mightn't even set the clock going on 5 minutes, councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. No, this won't take long from my point of view. I think we can see that everyone in this chamber is conflicted on this, despite how they vote. I think it's quite clear that we're all seeing the faults and failures here that are making this difficult for us. And once again, the planning scheme is being used against the community on this occasion. And it's worthy of note that one of the motions that we're talking about later in this meeting covers the 42-day required period for putting planning issues through. And I think it says in those reports, have the shortest period of any state in Australia for that purpose. So, it just shows you the things that can go wrong and how it can be used to do something that's quite detrimental and divisive to the community. I feel for the people of Bichno, I feel for the loss of that potential amenity there as a great site for commercial development. And I thank Deputy Mayor for his very good description of the effect on the community. And unfortunately, like yourself, Mayor, I will have to support the recommendation.
Thank you,
Thank you.
councillor Churchill. On that basis, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Churchill, councillor Young, Mayor Arnold and councillor McQueenie. Those against.
I haven't.
Oh, you
I'm
haven't
still,
voted.
no, I haven't.
Oh,
I'm still thinking.
Well,
Am I allowed to the
you
little
can
thing?
abstain.
No, you can't abstain.
No.
You can, but it's a
abstain
no
would be
vote.
no.
Or
I will put the motion again. All those in favour? Councillor Churchill, councillor Young, councillor Woods, Mayor Arnold and councillor McQueenie. Those against? Deputy Mayor Simons, councillor Parker and councillor Edwards. The motion is reluctantly passed. Thank you. We'll have further conversations, I'm sure, with the Bichno community around it. Agenda item D 4.4 is, sorry. No, another one to go. Agenda item 4.4 is DA 2022/321 at 13 to 15 Franklin Street, Swansea. Alterations and additions to an existing building, change of use to food services and hotel industry, construction of a wine bar and construction of 5 dwellings. There is a recommendation on page 64. Deputy Simons, thank you.
I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme for Morgan Spring Bay, DA 2022/00321 at 13 to 15 Franklin Street, Swansea, CT 140386/1. For the alterations and additions to an existing building, change of use to food services and hotel industry, construction of a wine bar and construction of 5 dwellings be approved with the following conditions. 1, 3 through to 17, 1 through to 17. And the advice A through to L.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? A seconder, please. Councillor Woods, thank you. Do you have any wish to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve this.
Reserved, thank you. Speaker for or for the motion? Councillor Parker? Just a speaker? That's fine.
Just clarification, thanks. On page 66, it says that in response to traffic and parking. It says the proposal includes a vision of total 18 car parking spaces in accordance with the Morgan Spring Bay car parking cash in lieu contribution policy 2022. The recommendation includes a condition that required the developer to pay cash in lieu contribution to equivalent of 23 car parking spaces. When we first started talking there, we referred to the 18 car parking space. So are we referring the 18 plus the 23 or just 23 altogether?
Ms Small, is this you? It is, thank you. Ms Small will respond, councillor Parker.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So we're looking at 18 provided on the site, and then the recommendation includes the cash in lieu contribution of 23.
Excuse me, could you say that again a little more slowly, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the response states that there's 18 currently provided on site as part of the development application. The condition of approval is provides for 23 car parking spaces provided in the way of a cash in lieu contribution. As long as my math is correct, so we're looking at a total of 41 car parking spaces, 18 provided on site, 23 provided through a cash in lieu contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Macroney.
I may take some time too.
I've got 5 minutes,
Yep,
and at the 30
That's
second
all I
mark,
need.
it'll be
Certainly.
this.
Okay, so this proposal, doesn't meet the Parking Sustainable Transport Code's acceptable solution, which I understand in using the scheme's reference table was approximately 74 car spaces. The proposal details the 18 that we've just discussed, and the recommendation includes the cash in lieu contributions are equivalent to 41 spaces, rather than looking at an additional on-site parking requirement. So I want to look at the actual performance criteria that relate, as this is what it's being assessed against. So P1.1 states, and I'm quoting from here, the number of on-site car parking spaces for users, excluding dwellings, must meet the reasonable needs of the use having regard to a number of things, one of which is F, the availability, accessibility and safety of on-street parking having regard to the nature of the roads, traffic management and uses in the vicinity. In this context, according to the legislation, the Act and the scheme, uses in this sense is not used with a capital U, it's a little u. It doesn't relate to using use categories, it relates to what's actually happening in the vicinity. So we're being asked to consider what's happening in the vicinity with regard to availability, accessibility and safety in P1.1F. This performance criteria requires us to consider the uses, therefore, in the vicinity and those issues of accessibility and availability. We're not talking about formal zones, we're not talking about capital U use categories. So the response we have to this criteria points and mentions quite appropriately speed limits and spatial study of the raw parking numbers using a radius of 125 metres, again, all important. But they doesn't specifically talk to issues of availability and accessibility and safety with regard to what's happening in the vicinity. Those uses in the immediate vicinity include legal, office, cafes, service station, and critically, a pharmacy. The pharmacy is located directly opposite the proposed development, and in so much as the performance criteria require care around the number of spaces, sorry, the pharmacy is located directly opposite the proposed development. So it's critical in terms of vicinity, and also its use is critical around the issues of availability and accessibility. Pharmacies provide health services, not only around medications, but immunisations, health checks. They're not just a retail outlet. This client traffic that visits pharmacies, excuse me, is often short-term, quick, and in bulk in numbers and regular. So and also in addition to that, those who visit this critical service, so we're not talking about going for a cuppa, we're talking about things that affect life and and health, often include people with more than one medical condition, with mobility issues, with breathing issues, young parents with infants, etc. So the use for accessibility and availability in the vicinity is a critical issue for this particular activity in the vicinity. Sorry, scrolling. The pharmacy there, which is the only one available to the community, experiences about 200 people a day in high season, or about 25 an hour, and in low seasons about 80 or 10 an hour. The pharmacy is clearly not the only business that requires parking in that close vicinity, but it's the most critical in terms of availability and access, I'd argue, because these are many people who cannot walk long distances, may well be disabled, have issues, breathing or mobility, etc. The current available parking spaces are in reasonable proximity to the pharmacy is extremely limited. And the pharmacy already has a regular and random delivery of medications happening specifically because people call and say, I can't park outside or near the pharmacy. So it's not just availability, it's a clear indication of accessibility as well. They're limited in the use of their own off-street parking by the need to provide access for deliveries of things that have critical cold chain management. So things like your immunisations, things that are injectables often, have to remain at certain very critical temperatures. Therefore, they need unloading docks. They also need often to provide emergency managements, at least I'm advised about once a month, to make sure in the management of emergency situations at that facility, let alone who they might deliver to the community. So their own situation is hampered in terms of additional parking because of the nature of what they do. Obviously, the developer's proposal that's been submitted does not include the parking required for the acceptable solution. And so we're making a decision based on the criteria, performance criteria. Now, if the issue in meeting this performance criteria is access and availability, an in-lieu component doesn't help for immediate access in this vicinity for parking, which is suggested as a recommendation, so, rather than, for instance, requiring the developer to reconsider additional parking. So in the context of our requirement as a planning authority, doesn't meet the acceptable solution. I don't believe it's met the performance criteria around specific things that relate to the existing use, access and availability. So I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Parker?
Yeah, yes, Madam Mayor, can I ask Councillor, I've got lost there how we come to go from a wine bar, so on, to compare it to a chemist.
Yep,
To a chemist.
Yep, because the performance criteria states the number of on-site car parking spaces for users, excluding dwellies, must meet the reasonable needs of the use. And the use having regard to availability, so we need to meet, if we're going to support the idea of this recommendation, we need to meet the availability and accessibility of on-street parking in the vicinity of Morrison store.
So, Councillor McQueenie, there's a couple of things in there, and the General Manager, Mr. Woodward, Mr. Bonner or Ms. Small will tell me if I've got this wrong. I understand that the pharmacy has some off-street parking at the back of their building. No?
That's the bit that they can't use, the customer traffic.
Okay. The other option, which is what happens here, is council providing limited parking time outside the pharmacy, because that does happen here and it does happen outside the post office. So
and at the moment I'm advised that there is a 1 hour park out the front, but of course it's not policed in any way currently.
We don't have any way of policing it. As
Well, we
an
don't have
officer, we have
resourced
to,
anything like
as,
that. Yeah.
as a council, we don't have any way of policing it.
Mhm.
However, you've certainly raised some issues around the planning. So I'm just going to, General Manager, around parking on that. General
Well,
Manager, do we need to make some further comment?
Mine only,
Councillor McQueenie?
mine is only just an observation, through your mayor.
Right.
Thank you, councillor McQueenie, for your comments. That space, that street, Franklin Street, particularly over the summer months, does come under some pressure for parking and availability. I'm not aware that there has, over many years of summers, over several months, that there's ever been an issue with someone not being able to access, an issue around the pharmacy. You know, that has been the case for several years. Whether this one development is the straw that breaks the camel's back in that regard is up to council to think about and decide. But I'm just making an observation that for many years the pharmacy has operated, as far as I'm aware, without any hindrance, even through peak periods when there's a lot of demand on parking on the street.
Councillor Young?
Madam Mayor, I just pose the question. Does a visit to a wine bar and only having 2 drinks, so you can drive away, not adversely affecting the alcohol limits that we're all governed by, take as short a time as visiting the pharmacy to get a prescription filled or an injection given? Because it seems to me, if the car parking spaces that our planning scheme theoretically requires for the very nice development for Morrison's store, for 70 or 60 odd spaces, that might be an important factor, bearing in mind that many people that Councillor McQueenie has talked of would not be able to get parking so they can visit the pharmacy, either because of disability or the fact that, like many of us, we're elderly. And it arises mainly, does it not, because of the fact that to go to a pharmacy takes a lot shorter time than having a couple of drinks at a wine bar. That's the thing that worries me about it.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
Can I just say that just basic common sense tells me that people go to wine bars at night and they go to pharmacies during the day. So every time I've parked in Swansea, I park at the IGA and walk across the road. I'm going to the pharmacy or anywhere else. So I use their car park as a council car park, basically. And, you know, there's not many people going to be fronting up to the wine bar at 11 o'clock in the morning and getting on the terps. They're going to be, to me, I think it can make the parking better, not worse. But that's my thoughts.
Just a moment, Councillor McQueenie. I have to let other councillors speak.
Absolutely.
Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, I've missed out on a lot of the information to this through my own absence at the recent workshop. But I can see that parking is going to be a major issue on this site. And I've tried to think about it in the terms of what is being proposed here. And I see cars wanting to use, for restaurant reasons, for wine bar reasons, for whatever reasons, car spaces for long periods of time. So that to me means that these spaces will be occupied for longer periods at any one time. And I think it is going to be quite a serious issue. The other thing we're looking at with this piece of road, it's not just the main street of Swansea, it is also the Tasman Highway. This access takes large, heavy traffic through there every day, all the time, no time limits, and it has no realistic bypass for heavy traffic. So it's quite clear in my head that more off-street parking, and it will need to be close to that locality to get people to use it, is required. Now, what are we doing? We're actually saying we're going to put 5 residential spaces on this land, which is going to have other developments beside it that are going to attract community. So on the one hand, we're going to build residents, which potentially take away parking spaces, while we're still trying to develop the other parts, the other components of this whole proposal to attract people to it. Now, there's no realistic closed spaces that can be used. So perhaps we should be looking at it another way and saying that some of that space, at least, that is going to be there for residential development should be perhaps used for car parking facilities. And that might be that it's, who knows, it might mean that it will require elevated car parking as well as ground level parking. I don't know. Underground parking we know is going to be part of that development, but it's not going to answer the problem. It's only going to add to the problem in that it becomes part of the requirement for the residences. So I just don't know that that whole parking issue has been analysed well enough, and to simplify it and say, okay, well, there's 18 spaces on site and they're going to pay for another 23. So we've got effectively 41 spaces. I don't think that really is going to look good in 10 years' time from now. That's my
I think if I may, Councillor Churchill, and I'm going to defer to Mr. Woodward here, during the workshop where the matter was discussed, there was a suggestion made that if this particular development goes ahead and the parking in lieu fee is paid, then council should make some serious consideration around creating some off-street parking. There is one site that we've talked about for the last 15 years, and which is in close proximity to the main street there. And I think we probably with this development have an opportunity to further that with these 23 extra parking spaces. Is that a reasonable summation, Mr. Woodward?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So yes, the idea is that the contribution would go towards potentially pay for council to develop an off-street parking and look at obviously where that can be close to the CBD or the key business area. But certainly, I guess we recognise that a contribution could go towards that. The fact, I guess, that to respond to, I guess, what would be the ideal use of the site, I guess we've also taken that into account as far as it being a heritage listed site, so building, lifting up and having more car parking. Does that sort of is that in line with what we want to see at that site? Not necessarily. So it was a planner's assessment that looking at the performance criteria and the uses around it, that recommendation was made.
And the general manager has actually indicated that, taking account of Councillor McQueen's concerns around the pharmacy area, we could, external to this particular process, review the parking in that pharmacy precinct, if you like. And I'm sure Mr. Porch would be very, very amenable to having some signs done for restricted parking in that area. Yeah, Councillor McQueen.
Can I just say yeah, that's right. 2 things in relation to the pharmacy. If council wants to call them, does regularly have access issues, which is why they are having to do the home deliveries, which so there is a parking problem and has been over those years, albeit they may not have called council directly to say we are having to do home deliveries for medications. The second thing is that unless it's policed, which was also their point, because people come to the one car park outside, which has got a 1 hour, and they regularly go off and do stuff. People at the pharmacy know that they are actually locals. And so unless it's policed, So if we're talking about a process where we introduce bylaws, where we have to resource somebody to go and police it, then that's a solution. But in the absence of that, that doesn't fix this problem outside
Well,
pharmacies.
I disagree with you, councillor, because we do have that situation here in Tribunna, but now also outside the post office, Mr. Porch very generously agreed to putting a limited time parking outside the post office for all the same issues that you spoke about in Swansea in relation to this development. And this is probably introducing information, but it's, I believe, relevant information in terms of your concerns around the parking. Now, the parking here in Tribunna, it isn't police because council doesn't have the capacity or the resources, human or otherwise, to actually police it.
And there isn't a parking, yeah. Sorry.
But I understand that the new parking outside the post office has been an amazing success because the operators of the post office have the capacity to mention to people, you can't park there for longer than half an hour.
I'd agree with you, Mayor, about the fact that it works really well here. It also has always no parking, like parking available, unlike this particular bit of land. And in terms of your comment about the issue with currently policing it, that's been identified by the pharmacy itself, not me.
So I take your point in relation to this matter. I think we've had significant conversation around it. I know the officers did an enormous amount of work around the parking and the parking in lieu requirements. We talked at the workshop about what was the potential parking in lieu, and the officers have come back with their report now, following all the councillors' comments and the like at the time. So my view is, unless there are any other comments to be made or anyone who wishes to close debate on it, was that you, Councillor Simons? It was. If there's no further comments in relation to this, I will ask the Deputy Mayor to close debate and we will see the outcome. Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is obviously a huge project for Swansea. And really the only thing that's come up in the discussion we've had so far is the parking. So to me, I think the parking is a solution we can find. The officers have shown or given us options to be able to find a solution in that area, and part of that may well be that we do off-site parking. It's interesting. It's quite a good. It's one of the better traffic impact assessment studies I've seen, and it's interesting to note there's 106 spaces within 200 metres of the proposal. But the other part of it that's quite interesting is they did do parking demand, and they did on-street surveys in January 23. And if you read through it, you'll find that at the peak time of the day, 12 p.m, within 100 metres, 34 of the 61 spaces are occupied. Within 100 to 200 metres, 12 of the 45 spaces are occupied, and within 200 metres, there's 46. So of 106 spaces occupied. So I just don't think the parking is an issue that you would stop a development of this size and this potential benefit for Swansea on the back of that. So I'll definitely be supporting it today.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Now, close debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillors Young and McQueenie are against. The motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Woods, I did see you vote for the motion, didn't I? Thank you. That's right. I thought I was hoping I hadn't missed you. Under Regulation 25, the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2015, as chairperson, I hereby declare council is no longer acting as a planning authority under provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 or Section 4 of the agenda. Deputy Mayor.
I move that council no longer acts as a planning authority at what is it, 329?
329, thank you. Thank you, councillor Woods. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you.
You said ever again.
Agenda item 5 is the financial reports. There is a recommendation on page 70. Deputy Mayor, thank you.
I'll move that council receives and notes the financial reports as attached to this report for the period ended September 2023.
Thank you, seconder. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McLeany, thank you. Deputy Mayor, I'm aware you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the General Manager or perhaps our Finance Officer, and I'm happy for this to be taken on notice. Would you be able to provide the councillors with the costs council has incurred for running the Bicheno Memorial Hall for the 2022-2023 financial year? And by the costs, I mean, what is the actual real cost to council of that hall? What funds have been expended on it? Not necessarily depreciation, but potentially if that can be separated and split out of it, and potentially other line items that you can break it down into, so we can see what the actual cost is or what council's contribution is in actual fact.
Deputy Mayor, do you make cash expenditure and cash receipt?
Yeah, and I'm happy if the officers want to include in kind, if they think there's a component of that that is in kind and not reflected in cash, but as a cost to council. I'm happy for them to separate that out as well, if need be.
You take it on notice?
Yes, I'll take on notice. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Deputy Mayor, how do you want that information?
Happily just to
Bring it back to
circulate it
council? Okay.
between the councillors, yeah, just, yep.
Any other questions on the financial reports? Further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 6 is the section 24 Hall Committee. 6.1 is Tribunal Hall Committee. The 19th of September, there is a recommendation on page 74. Councillor McQueenie, thank you.
I move that the minutes of the Tribunal Hall Committee meeting held on the 19th of September 2023 be received and noted.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Young, thank
With
you.
one caveat,
Pardon?
with one caveat on page 71 at about line 6. The meeting was called to order at 11:05 p.m. Now, I just think that should have been AM. There's
And
been no late night meetings at the hall that I'm aware of.
And the, well, if it was 11:06 AM, councillor, and I take your point, and the meeting was closed at 11:41 PM, it was a very long meeting. So the minute taker might like to correct that in their records. So no further comment or question. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's against. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 6.2 is the Coles Bay Hall community meetings. There is minutes, section 24. There is a recommendation on page 76. Councillor Woods, thank you. I wasn't ready.
I can say it if you like.
That,
Madam
I'll
Mayor.
move that the minutes of the Coles Bay Hall Committee meeting held on Monday, the 25th of September 2023 be received and noted.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Young, thank you. Any questions or comments on the Coles Bay? Oh, could I, General Manager, I might just ask, could we just have a council have a small update on where we're actually at with the changes to the annex, and then I'm sure I need to defer to Mr. Porch.
No,
please,
no,
but-
that's, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I will defer to Mr. Porch. There has been some progress.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, yes, we continue to progress the building permit application through the various channels. There have been additional reports required for that bushfire report. Because it's Crown land, we've got to get approval from Parks. The original design needed some amendment, not meeting all of the requirements of the energy efficiency standards today. So there's a few little elements that we're just pulling together to finalise the plans to lodge for the building application.
And Mr. Porch, I do acknowledge that you had made a comment in the next agenda item in your thing, but I just thought it was opportune to include that information at this particular juncture. If there's no other questions, sorry.
Comments,
Yeah,
sorry.
of course.
Just while we talking about building and development, so I know, sorry,
This particular building and development or building and development in general?
general.
So can we defer that to
Yep.
Mr. Porch's for the
Okay,
next
yep.
agenda item?
Yep. we can do
Because
that.
this is specific to Coles Bay General Manager. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments in relation to the Coles Bay Hall Committee, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, it's carried unanimously. So we will move on to agenda item 7.1, which is the Director of Works and Infrastructure's report. There is a recommendation on page 81. Councillor Woods, thank you.
I move that council notes the information.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Parker, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Woods?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question. I did ask this question to Mr. Porch yesterday when I had a meeting with him, but being that it's part of the document we have here, with regards to the Spring Beach toilet refurbishments, which have been met with great delight, I must add, with the floor, the tiling in the floor, it's been said to me that they're quite slippery, and with wet feet, you know, there could possibly be possibly an incident
Risk?
risk. So, as I said, I did ask Mr. Porch this question yesterday, but I'd like it to be publicly acknowledged if I may. Thank
That
you.
wasn't webbed feet, was it?
No, Mr. Porch.
Mayor, tiles are rated for their slip resistance. These tiles for this are rated for public places like public amenities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Porch, Ms. Carol McQueenie?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not sure if it's for Mr. Porch or the General Manager, but there was talk some months ago about an ablution strategy.
About the what?
An ablution strategy. When is that work expected to either commence or be completed, just in terms of the ongoing issue of disability and toilets?
It's something that hasn't quite got underway yet, Councillor McQueenie. Thank you for your question. I think we will probably do it as part of the precinct planning that is going to be done for each of the townships, and that'll incorporate public ablutions in that precinct planning review. So each of the town plans that we have, town precinct plans that we have, as you're aware, is due for review, and we've appointed someone to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ridley.
Just a quick question of Director Porch. And I know he's had time away from work due to family reasons. Just wondering if you had a chance to look at that, the speed sign that has been requested in Swanwick by the lovely old ladies we go to visit. Concerned about people.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, I haven't had a
On
chance to
notice,
read it.
Mr. Porch, on notice, Councillor Ridley, you might like to liaise with Mr.
certainly
Porch
will.
out of session.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Mr. Porch, you're not going to be able to answer this one, I don't think, but it's probably an on notice question, but in your report under stormwater and drainage, there's Riverside Drive, Orford, a shared zone signage and advisory speed reduction signage completed. And that's great. I'm just wondering, do we have Riverside Drive on any sort of reseal process? Because with the level of traffic that goes down that road now, particularly boats and trailers and the like, it is fast becoming a very poorly maintained road in our road system. Now, I accept that you may not be able to give me an answer right now in relation to Riverside Drive, but if I could just flag it for you to have a look at, if you wouldn't mind.
Certainly, Madam Mayor, the program is full this year and just about to be completed. It will be certainly on the list for next year amongst the priority roads.
Lovely, thank you.
And as an aside to that, I do acknowledge the 20-kilometre speed limit in the park, the children's parking area opposite the pub. Great place for a park to be, but anyway, always been there. But the fact of it is that street, and I acknowledge that I live in it, so therefore I see it, is I know we are at 50 kilometres within. It nearly needs to be, it really nearly needs to be a 40-kilometre zone, because the amount of cars and boats and in peak time, which fly down and up that street, is just phenomenal. So maybe something to be looked at down the track, when we get a new road.
Speed hump.
I'd like one. I'd like two, actually.
That shakes the boat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you.
For you, Madam
Yeah,
Mayor,
councillor.
I see that it says the Revan Road landslip has been completed. I watched the completion of that this morning, and they've done an excellent job, and I think the council did an excellent job in organising that. I think hats off to Director Porch and everyone else involved, because it's finished, it's done, road's open, as I understand it, ahead of schedule, and they've done a very good job.
And if I may, I would just like to mention the fire at Friendly Beaches, and Mr. Porter has given us a very good summary around that. I think that our council staff that were involved in emergency services, in evacuation places, and the various other things that had to happen during that fire, did an absolutely magnificent job, and they are to be congratulated for their response in that very, very difficult time. So, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments in relation to Mr. Porter's? Yes, General Manager. Yes, I'm sorry, you wanted
No,
to
that's
say-
all right. Just before we move off infrastructure, so councillors may be aware that we've been a bit under-resourced in the building area of late. Well, when I say of late, particularly this year. We've managed to secure a building services officer very recently. I know the mayor has met him, and you'll get to meet him in due course. So we're starting to pick up on some of the backlog of works that are happening, and also for Mr. Porch, certainly assistance there with projects like the annex that we've just spoken about at Coles Bay. So you will meet Daniel Herman in due course. I should have actually got him into this meeting, remiss of me, sorry, but you will meet him in due course, and I just want to give you the confidence that we're back on top of building and building maintenance generally.
You'll have trouble fitting through the door. It's no small fellow.
Thank you, councillors. If there's nothing further on Mr. Porter's report, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8 is officers' reports requiring a decision. 8.1 is the proposed schedule for 2024 meetings. Councillor Woods, thank you.
I'll move that council by absolute majority, 1, adopts the following schedule of dates for 2024 ordinary meetings of council to commence at 2 p.m. and 2, that the 2024 annual general meeting of the Morgan Spring Bay Council be held on Tuesday, 10th of December, commencing at 5:30, and 3, the special meetings of council may be called at any time by the mayor. That's the only person who can call a special meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor Woods.
Did you get that one, Miss?
Seconded, councillor Young. Seconded, thank you. Did we get that little amendment, Ms. Hazelwood? by the mayor. Okay. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Only just to say that, we say this pretty much every year since we become live streaming and how we used to go to each community, and have our meetings. I think that's sort of been, allayed a wee bit in the sense that we now do Community Connect in each community. So therefore the community does have access to us, and if they want to watch us, they can watch us live stream.
My only question in relation to this, and it's a matter of process, is that should the venue be included in this motion? Should it say that they be held at Tribunna?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Manager?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, we haven't done that previously, but that's not to say that we can't do it now.
That's all right. If it
the
hasn't been done,
venue.
I just,
Only because I think I think council and the community become used to the fact that this is the only chambers
it's
in
okay.
the municipality.
That's fine. It was just, I know in the past we have, gosh, it might be years ago, and my memory might be going too far back, that we did always say that the meetings would be held at Tribunna after we started live streaming, but that's fine. I'm okay with that. If there's no further questions or comments around the meeting, Deputy Mayor? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 8.2 is the proposed council office closure. Councillor McQueenie.
I move that council endorses the closure of Tribunna council offices from 12 p.m. on Thursday, the 14th of December 2023, to reopen on Friday, the 15th of December 2023, and from 4:30 on Friday, the 22nd of December 2003, to reopen on Tuesday, the 2nd of January 2024 at 9 a.m.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Churchill, thank you. Any questions or comments you wish to have speak, Councillor McQueenie?
Just one small one, Mayor. I seem to remember that after last year, with that particular concern about toilets and other things being adequately serviced, so whilst it talks about like critical works, are we going to respond to that concern that was raised by people from last year's
General
closure?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, every year we do have, there's certainly crew available for emergency type events, but there's also a crew that's available to carry out any routine maintenance or maintenance of that nature, for example, ablution box over that period.
Okay.
And Deputy Mayor?
And is that crew a contract crew or is that staff?
That would be my understanding, that would be mostly staff.
And if I may, General Manager, I have a recollection that there was that as Councillor McQueenie's identified, last year there was some issues around the timing for emptying the bins and the like at the various facilities. That was unexpected due to the number of people. And I think we did do if my memory serves correctly, Mr. Porch and his team may have done a review of the time that's needed at that Christmas time to do this, and appropriate steps will be taken this year, I think. Is that right?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. I think this year we're in for a really bumper season, summer season. Just driving through Swansea this morning, I just amazed at the amount of people around. So we took note of the issues that we had last season, and locations that we had. For example, I know Spring Beach down here was one of those, and have adjusted the cycles, contract and staff who will be working to accommodate those peaks and troughs. So it's always, I just want to say, councillors, it's always quite difficult over that period because it's very hard to predict the influx. You obviously got to pay people to be on call and available, and very hard because it's all mainly weather dependent, and very hard to predict the influx at certain locations at certain times. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is a toilet can be cleaned at 9 o'clock and be in not good condition by 10 o'clock.
Anybody else?
I'm just gonna say that's a cost we have to bear.
Yeah.
And it's got to be dealt with.
Yeah,
Because you cannot
absolutely.
have, some of the issues. we've
But
got.
I think to follow on from your question, councillor McQueenie, I think staff have it very much in hand at the moment, using the data from last Christmas. Councillor Woods?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just a question through you to the general manager, and it's about the closure times. It's we're voting for the closure of council offices from 12 p.m. Thursday and to reopen again Friday, 14th of December and Friday. That we having that afternoon, the council offices will be closed. For what reason?
I suspect it's a Christmas party, councillor Woods.
Well, there you go.
Which through you, Madam,
Ramadan, you know.
which through you, Madam Mayor, you will be invited.
Yes, I know.
And I think it's an opportunity for this council group to offer our thanks to the staff for the amount of work that they've done throughout the year by giving them that afternoon.
Yep.
And a Christmas function, so. Okay, so everybody happy with that? Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 8.3 is nomination of councillor to the Cranbrook Hall Section 24 Special Committee, and there is a recommendation on page 92. Councillor Young.
Madam Mayor, I move that council appoint Councillor Richard Parker to the Cranbrook Hall Committee effective 24 October 2020.
Councillor Parker, do you accept
Yes,
the
I do.
nomination?
I do.
Thank
Thank
you.
Madam
Deputy Mayor, you seconding?
Yep.
That was you. Thank you. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Council owned vehicle policy is 8.5. There is a.
Missed that.
Oh, sorry, I put a tick too soon. 8.4 is the community small grant application for the Tribunna Christmas crew. Councillor Woods, I believe you have a
Yes, I
motion.
do have a motion. Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that council approve the application for community small grant funding for the Tribunna Christmas crew for $1,500 for the Tribunna Christmas parade and festivities to be held on Friday, the 15th of December 2023, plus in-kind support by way of advertising of road closures and management of those roads that will be affected. The roads that will be affected are Victoria Street, Melbourne Street, Vickery Street and Charles Street.
Councillor Woods, can I just clarify that you haven't identified a dollar value versus it's all in kind? Right. Thank you. I didn't. quite get that far. Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Parker. Councillor Woods, would you like to speak?
Yes,
to
I
the
would like
motion?
to speak to this. This is not a rejig or regen, it's a rejig of what was the Christmas parade, which has been sorely missing from our municipal area down here for a good number of years. There is a young, vibrant, excited group of people that are in this. They are now an incorporated body. Work that they are actually doing now is just phenomenal, and the reason why I've nominated $1,500 is because we can actually go to that cost, but also this is a startup for them.
Yes.
They have to have insurances and the like, and have some money left over to be able to do something with it with regards to the parade, and such. So I ask councillors to support me in this motion, and kickstart Christmas in Tribunna. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to do you, Madam Mayor. So just to understand it, it's $1,500 in money
From the small community grant funding.
right?
Yep.
And that includes in-kind support.
No.
Does not include
Plus,
in-kind.
probably a bit much, but considering we haven't done it for a while.
That's how kind they are.
Is there potential that this could come from the events budget this particular year? Because $1,500, and that was my question, the $1,500 is the upper limit for the community small grant. And if we set the in-kind into that, it then exceeds that upper limit.
Can I ask, do we have to put the in-kind into that or because isn't it a dollar value?
I think here through you, Madam Mayor, I think it's a fair question that Councillor Woods, the policy as it reads now, because of what we're talking about right here, needs to be clarified a bit more. It could be read as a cash amount of a certain amount and in-kind support. So this is fine, but in terms of the policy, council needs to be able to make it clear in future that it's one or the other or both, and what the total is.
What the upper limit is.
Because in-kind support in some circumstances can exceed $1,000 as well,
So in terms of Councillor Wood's motion, it can remain in this case in relation to the policy. We're not looking to take the money from some other budget at this point. We don't think we need to.
No, Madam Mayor,
Breach of the policy.
it'll come out of the community grant
Okay.
policy.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, and we can review that policy then to make it much clearer. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to the General Manager. Excuse me. In previous years, when this has been heard on a Friday, the council chambers then has been closed for the Saturday and Sunday, so we don't have any outdoor workforce. Over the years, they've given lollies out and so on, and the town has always been in a pretty bad mess for the Saturday and Sunday afterwards, and it's a busy time. A lot of people coming into town. Is there a way that the council can go in on a Saturday morning and clean the streets up?
So, Councillor Parker, that's actually, if I can use the term, not relevant in this discussion. It's bringing further information into it.
Yep.
And could I ask you to liaise with the General Manager out of session in relation to that matter?
Yep, fine.
In terms of the in-kind support for the road closure, I would say that our council staff our outdoor staff particularly who manage road closures are absolutely amazing in their commitment to community events where road closure is needed. So I don't think there's a problem in that area. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to?
No, sorry.
No. Councillor McQueenie?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering if we're having a council float.
A what?
A council float.
You're going to do one?
Well, yes. Now that I can tell you that many years ago, they had an absolutely wonderful council
We should
float.
do it again.
So we perhaps need to speak to Miss Hazelwood, I think, as our community engagement officer. She might be the perfect person to think about a float.
I'll take that as a yes.
Thank you. If there's nothing further in relation to this matter, Councillor Young, did you want to comment? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those
I'd
against?
just like to know who's going to be Lady Godiva on the float.
I'm away.
Not going there, Councillor Young. Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. Agenda item 8.5 is the council owned vehicle policy. There is a recommendation on page 94. Thank you. Councillor Churchill, thank you.
I move the council rescind the council-owned vehicle policy and note that fleet management will be managed in accordance with best practice guidelines and internal processes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Woods, thank you. Do you wish to comment, Councillor Churchill?
I'm just hoping that in line with best practice that we start to think about electric vehicles for the council fleet. We're seeing that the Queensland government currently is looking at turning their entire fleet of vehicles into electric vehicles. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, Councillor Young?
I don't know what best practice guidelines are and where I find them. I didn't see it on the printout, which I was kindly given, and I couldn't see it anything on the web.
Sure.
What are best practice guidelines, and who gives the guide?
Madam Mayor, I can send you, councillor, the best practice guidelines. It's Australian
Whereabouts do we get them
standard.
from?
Australian, I'll send it to you.
No,
Australian,
where do we get from?
it's Australian asset management guidelines
For whom?
for fleet,
Councils?
For fleets.
All sorts of fleets.
or anyone who may be managing fleet. Yeah, so it talks about disposal, it talks optimum disposal, it talks about maintaining vehicles and all that sort of stuff selling at the right time, etc., etc. Which is what we do with all of our assets.
We always have to be wise, but I assume it only applies to some fleets and not BHP or Rio's trucks or things like that. I'm just curious to find out a bit more about it. A good idea in theory.
Councillor Young, I'm sure.
That's
that-
all I need to know. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm sure the general manager or Mr Woodward will provide you with that information if you wish. Councillor Parker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't go into what previous years were like with this, but I'd like to know, it says the recommendation says the council rescind the council own vehicle policy. What's the difference between the one now? Because I don't have a policy now compared to what we were rescinding. I know we have a policy of what we're approving, but what are we rescinding?
The original policy.
Mhm.
There is a policy and it was,
On the website,
We don't have the new.
In
policy.
attachments.
it's in the attachments.
I couldn't find the attachment.
The old policies in the
Yeah.
attachments, but
Yeah,
we
but I
don't.
don't know what the old policy sorry, Madam Mayor, I just don't know how the old policy compares to what this new one are that we're putting forward.
It's, sorry, what?
I don't know what the old policy, how it compares to the new one we're asking to approve.
What the point of difference is.
I don't know that we're not exactly asking
No.
for a new policy. We're just asking to rescind the old one,
Yeah.
and staff will take account of the best practice guidelines in relation to the future management of our assets, of the fleet asset. General Manager? sir?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So the policy as is outlined in the report is outdated in a number of respects. And the recommendation is that the management of fleet generally within the organisation is done internally. It doesn't require a policy. So the fleet will be done under best practice asset management guidelines as we manage bridges, as we manage buildings, as we manage roads, as we manage vehicles.
And as simple as managing this IT management as well. That's done internally by staff. It is, as I understand it, it doesn't require a policy that is linked to the council making a decision around it. It's if you like an operational matter. So, okay. Happy with that?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Agenda item 8.6 is the disposal of council land at Spencer Street, Tribunna. We welcome Mr. Jason Watson, our property officer, to the chamber. There is a recommendation on page 98. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that one council resolve under section 178 of the Local Government Act 1993 to form an intention to dispose, exchange or lease of public land being 25 to 35 Spencer Street, Tribunna, title reference 55156/25-35, the land. 2, authorise the general manager to take all actions necessary to complete public notification of council's intent to exchange, sell or lease the land in accordance with section 178 of the Act. And 3, authorise the general manager to consider and acknowledge any objections received pursuant to section 178(6) of the Act and report to our future council meeting.
Seconder? Councillors, Councillor Churchill, thank you. Councillor Woods, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I reserve, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in relation to this agenda item?
No, I just think it's a good idea. It's just sitting there doing nothing and nothing, council is the owner of the land. They're not going to develop it, so we need to get somebody else in to do so. Thank you.
Those in favour? Those against? Against, for or against, councillor McQueenie? Thank you. For. The motion is carried unanimously. Agenda item 8.7 is disposal of council land 50 Beatty Avenue, Bicheno. There is a recommendation on page 102.
I'll move that council resolve under section 178 of the Local Government Act 1993, the Act, to form an intention to dispose, exchange or lease of public land being 50 Beatty Avenue, Bicheno, title reference 62307/50, the land. 2, authorise the general manager to take all action necessary to complete public notification of council's intent to exchange, sell or lease the land in accordance with section 178 of the Act. And 3, authorise the general manager to consider and acknowledge any objections received pursuant to section 178(6) of the Act and report to a future council meeting.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, councillor Young. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to speak?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think we should proceed.
Councillor Churchill?
Yes, I just wanted to draw to the meeting's attention that in the report on page 99, it speaks of the last time that this land was brought to council to be considered for sale was 2014, and that no decision was made at that time. This land was also brought to council again on the 24th of January 2017, where it went to a vote, and that vote was lost for all. And there are 3 councillors in the chamber at the moment who were involved in that vote. You might be able to perhaps enlighten us around that. If obviously straight off the top of your head is not going to be possible. But
I'll be perfectly honest and tell you, councillor Churchill, I had forgotten that I recalled the 2014 time, but I'd totally forgotten about 2017. I really had.
Short-term memory.
Sorry?
Short-term.
It's an age thing, councillor Churchill.
I just would be interested to know what the circumstances were around that, and I think community might be interested to know also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I truly don't recall. Councillor Woods, you might recall too.
I can recall it, and I can recall too that there was a lot of community, i.e. neighbouring people that were against it. And I can't remember whether I voted in the affirmative or not on the time, but we did get a lot of representations or a lot of community feedback from it, and yeah, so that's all I can remember. Thank you. Thank you.
And I think it's probably fair to say we may get a lot of community feedback again this time, but we'll
have to deal with it.
See. Any other comments or questions? Nothing further? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried unanimously. Mr. Watson, thank you for your attendance. 8.8 is a report from the General Manager in relation to the LGAT general meeting decisions. There are a number of recommendations in the LGAT agenda. The General Manager will be the voting delegate for this upcoming meeting, which is the 1st of November. General Manager. The items listed here at 8.8, 8.9, 8.10 and 8.10 rather are motions that require a decision of the council to inform the General Manager how to vote for this council. So on behalf of this council, so agenda item 8.8, there is a recommendation at page 109. Councillor Woods, then, and
Thank you. I'll move that council supports the break a day motion as included in this report.
take it as a second, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, what is the break a day, Mayor?
It's on page 103.
General Manager, do you want to make any comments?
Chair, Madam Mayor, yes, so, councillor Young, we've actually discussed this, here in these chambers, and it's an issue for, it's an issue for all councils, actually, particularly around planning and development. The delays and the hurdles, if you like, that we face in trying to get, approvals or information back, from Parks and Wildlife. So this is not just Glamorgan, it's certainly not just Glamorgan, because break a day are putting up the motion, but I think this will be well supported on the day, because it's if you like, a frustration that is experienced by all local government councils.
Thank you, General Manager.
So it's basically asking that asking that Parks and Wildlife, if it is a resourcing issue, a resource appropriately to deal with these matters.
And Crown Land Services.
And Crown Land Services deal with matters in a more effective way.
And it probably, Councillor Young, it probably goes to the very heart of waiting 9 months to get a signature on a piece of paper for a DA that council wanted to lodge.
That's a fast time for government.
It probably was fast, however.
I understand, I've looked at decision report on page 103, mentioned by the Deputy Mayor, and reading it again, I understand it and not support.
Councillor McQueenie?
Look, I've got a few questions because I don't think it reads clearly. So, I get the want to have Parks and Wildlife and Crown Land Services be more timely, but are we asking, because that's a loose subjective term, timely, are we asking them to review the published timeframes for that? Are we asking them to set timeframes for it? Because this looks like we're saying we want them to do a review, which generally isn't about resourcing. And then to actually say and resource it. So I'm just not sure.
I think the critical piece of information in here, Councillor McQueenie, is that the decision that is sought by Break a Day is that LGAT lobby the Tasmanian government to undertake the review. So LGAT will take a whole of sector view around the concerns of all 29 councils.
I get that. What I'm sort of saying is if I receive this at the other end in government, I'm thinking, there's lots of ways to not focus on, and do we want them to set timeframes, or do we want them to set service levels, or what are we actually wanting them to give us, rather than tell us that you'll resource it?
I think for you, Madam Mayor, Councillor McQueenie, there'll be much more to it than what you can read in here, because this is for LGAT to lobby, and what LGAT will do, and the 1st of November will be, I suspect, quite a significant discussion around this. Will be to formulate
the terms of reference.
And how we approach the government.
Cool.
And that's held LGAT meetings when a council seeks a whole of sector response to a particular matter. That's how LGAT work. They set some terms of reference around what it will be. So,
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried 7-0. Agenda item 8.9 is again another LGAT general meeting decision. It's road line marking responsibilities, Kingborough Council. There is a recommendation on page 112. Councillor Woods, thank you.
Thank you. I move that council supports the Kingborough Council motion as included in this report.
Thank you. Is that seconded, Deputy Mayor?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Sorry?
Should we note councillor Young? Is
No,
that-
he will be noted out of the room. We went in the minutes, but yes, you're right, councillor Young has left the chamber. Yeah, Mr Hazelwood will have noted that. Are there any questions or comments in relation to this motion, this requested motion or support for this motion?
Just a comment, if I may, just another one of the state government's handoffs to local government.
If there is, do you wish to add anything, General
Okay,
Manager,
yeah,
in relation to this?
The only thing I'd like to add, Madam Mayor, is landmarking is a very important aspect of the road network, and it's actually an important safety feature, if you like. So what the GAT are going to try to do here is get some, I suppose, number one, consistency across all the different road controlling authorities, all 29, but ensure that the landmarking is kept renewed. I'm sure you all agree, you drive on some roads and you can hardly see the landmarking anymore. So that's what this is all about.
Thank you.
It's safety driven.
Yeah, all right. If there's nothing further, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Young, we're dealing with agenda item 8.9, which is support for Kingborough Council's road line marking responsibilities. Do you wish to vote on this matter?
Madam Mayor, I didn't pay attention to the vote. The snakes just come into the house at home and it's upset my wife a little bit.
I'm sorry, what's come into your house? A
I'm not-
snake?
Yeah, so I'm not going straight home because he's managed to lock it in the garage. But I said to her, don't go in. And when I come home, I'll put on a pair of socks and shoes and gloves and hats and masks and go out there waving sticks and hopefully frighten
Thank you, councillor.
it out
So
or
I
alternatively me to death.
I will take it that the
I'll support the motion, whatever it was.
well, I think in the circumstances, we might say that the motion
Apologies
was
for the-
carried 7-0. Okay, and we'll record you as coming back into the meeting after that particular motion. All right, the next one is 8.10. It is LGAT General Meeting Decision Sought Review of the 42-day development application timeframe. Clarence City Council, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
I'll move that council supports the Clarence City motion as included in this report.
Seconded, councillor Churchill, thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you wish to comment?
Other than that's a fairly timely decision they're seeking, and it's a good conversation that needs to be had.
Totally support that.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor,
Councillor Young.
I have to confess to being the author of this 42-day period. Lobbying many years ago to stop things going forever.
You got it wrong.
I got it wrong. So it's only a question of a review and an assessment. I tend to think it's a good provision with all its difficulties, and there are many.
So it also may not go anywhere if a headline in today's paper or today's media is accurate, and that is a move by the state government for changes to development applications.
Oh, it might be beyond our power.
So, but
I'll support it, Madam Mayor.
I do agree with Councillor Young. It's, even though it's worked against us today, I do agree with his thoughts of otherwise development applications can drag on forever with scurrilous at times representations.
Other questions or comments in relation to Clarence City Council's motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? You're against?
I think so. Yeah.
So Edwards is against. The motion is carried 7-1. Thank you. Agenda item 8.11 is a request for a public memorial to Vietnam War Memorial. Councillor McQueenie.
I move that council approves the application for the installation of a replica long-tan cross in the triangular rose garden adjacent to the entry of the East Coast Heritage Museum facing the flagpole.
Seconded, councillor Woods. Thank you. Do you wish to speak, councillor?
Yeah, only that on Vietnam, the Veterans Day earlier this year, we who attended actually filled the concrete into the framework for this, so it's been curing all this time, and will be, subject to approval. I've in that place. It was really well attended, the Vietnam Vet Service at Swansea, so yeah, be nice to see it up.
Mr. Porch, did you wish to make any comment around this? Is that what we were?
I don't think there's any need,
No?
Madam Mayor.
Any other questions or comments in relation to this matter? Nothing further. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 9 is notices of motion, and there are none. There are nil petitions at 10. Agenda item 11, there are nil questions on notice by councillors. 11.2 is comments and statements. Councillor Woods.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, if I may. Mayor Arnold, councillors, staff and residents and ratepayers of Glamorgan Spring Bay is an elected member of this council since 2009. Consecutively, I wish to say a few words about the medical practices within our communities. When I was first elected onto council, I was then elected to the East Coast Health Committee when I was, and that was certainly an eye-opener for a fledgling councillor. Eventually, the community ended up with a model that has been working for a good number of years, right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you like it or not. It wasn't perfect, and councils certainly had many issues arise from running medical practice, which I might add, no other council runs medical practices because it's not core business of council, but this council at the time took it upon themselves to do this for our residents and ratepayers. I am proud of the fact that this council was and did deliver health services through our community. However, just recently our council voted to hand the reins over to CoHealth, a not-for-profit organisation, to run both Triabunna and Bicheno practices, and I would like to take this opportunity to wish them all the very best in keeping the services up to our community into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Any other statements or comments? Anyone else?
No, I'll support the comment. And I'll support the good work done by the doctors. Not always has it been smooth, but in general, they've done a good job.
Councillors, I've just got one comment, and it's about a business in Triabunna that is closing on Friday. After 20 odd years, and I don't know the actual number, the local butcher shop is closing down.
Oh.
So it was originally run by Billy and Karen, and more recently it's been Damien and Debbie on behalf of new owners. I understand that the business has to be sold by the new owners as I believe it's part of an estate. I was advised today that they will be closing on Friday, and Damien is going to take a well-earned rest before embarking on a different career path. I think the business has been an icon of Charles Street, Triabunna streetscape, and will be sorely missed by many, not just in Triabunna, because I know there are people from right across our municipal area and even outside our municipal area that have supported the butchery. So on behalf of council, I would like to wish Damien and Debbie all the best for the future. Yeah, and I think they are going to be missed. That business is going to be missed in our community.
Yeah.
General Manager has just alerted me. We have a draft fire bill before us that we need to comment on. General Manager, I'm comfortable with you advising council about it, if you would, even though this is in the councillor section, but I think it's important. I sat on the what was it called? The information session that was run just recently for the draft fire bill, And there was significant concerns raised by other mayors around the impact of what the new levy process will have on our rates and the rate structure in terms of how they're going to do this. So, General Manager, you might just like to offer some more comments around that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this particular matter has appeared belatedly on the Legat agenda as well for next week. It's suffice to say that there's quite a lot of concern amongst all the other councils as well in regards to what this revised levy means in terms of the impact both on residents and industry. The impact on the latter, from what we have been able to see by way of numbers, is quite significant. And we did an exercise just internally here on a local business, it is significant. And it'll be the same across all business entities in our municipality and other municipalities. Individual residents, less so, but still an impact, an increase. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion at Legat next week about this, but the sense of all the other councils, and I'm sure it's with us as well, is again, I don't believe we've been consulted well enough around this. Particularly, it's us that issues the rates notices. It's us that has the fire levy on the rates, and it's us that's going to bear the brunt of the community dissatisfaction. In that sense, I don't believe that local government was consulted, and that's been confirmed by an article in today's media from the CEO of Legat, saying exactly the same thing. You know, there's been a lack of consultation over such a significant impact.
And if I can, when I said on the information session last week, the significant concern by all councils or mayors that were involved in that, and I think from memory there was some general managers involved in it, but I think the majority of the councils were represented in one form or another, either general manager or mayor. Their main concern is the short time frame that we've got to comment on this draft bill. I think the consultation is 5th of November. So we were told last week, and we have to have in, and it's going to be really remiss of any council if they don't put in some sort of representation in relation to it.
Madam Mayor, does that mean we're at risk of having to do a supplemental rates demand to every ratepayer in the municipality to cover the levy?
I don't believe so, Councillor Young. I really don't know. I haven't read the new draft bill, so I don't know what the process is going to be. I just know there was significant concern around by some mayors that council was going to become a debt collector for the state government.
Well, I'm sure our ratepayers would like to know how much extra it will cost them, especially bearing in mind that last year there was the waste levy, and I won't be long, I suppose, before there'll be a land tax levy.
This is a significant change to the current fire levy, as I understand it. So the general manager and staff will keep a very close eye on it, and the general manager is planning on doing some submission to the consultation process.
And I'll, Madam Mayor, I'll send that to the mayor and to you before it goes. But we've got to get in. Unfortunately, it's a very short time frame. It's got to be in by the 5th of November. So.
Be nice
The president of LGAT did ask if there could be an extension of time. I'm not hopeful that will happen.
and also, I'll be to you, Madam Mayor. I'll be better informed as well following after Legat. See the approach that everyone else is taking.
Councillor Woods, did you have a question?
Oh, I don't have a question. I have a statement, but I don't think I should say it.
Okay.
I'd like to. But I won't.
Okay.
I'll say it. I'm going to say it, councillors, and it is not actually tongue in cheek, but after this meeting and with what this state government is is actually imposing on councils, maybe there should be a review of state government, they be issued with a PID.
Thank you, councillor Woods. Agenda, if there's no further comments by councillors, councillor Woods?
Just that, yeah, it'd be very beneficial if we could have a dot pointer sent to us just on what this is about, because any communications, any knowledge is very beneficial.
I did hear on the radio today that with this regard to this, and that some big businesses and farmers, that they're looking at a 66%
Yes.
increase on their fire levy.
Yes.
Well, everyone knows
Just like that.
businesses have got an unending source of money and it never comes back
Yeah.
to the ordinary person in the street that uses those businesses. The money drops down from heaven like manna.
Yeah, it's marvellous, isn't it?
Councillors, if there's no further comments to be made at agenda item 11.2, I will move to the closed session. There is a recommendation of, in relation to that on page 124. Deputy Mayor,
The council moves into closed session
at 4:30.
at 4:30.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor McQueenie, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Ms Hazelwood, will you please confirm when the recording has been terminated?